Thank you very much. I'm Jesper from BEUMER, and we're having the next session with Enrico Mellis and Jeppe Høier from Mærsk. So please come to the stage and give these guys a... So we're going to talk a little bit about you as VCs and how you look at the logistics investment. And first of all, thank you for coming and discussing this with us. I guess I see a lot of yellow name tags out there, so I guess there's going to be hopefully a lot of questions in a while. But first, let us know something about you, Jeppe. Tell us a little bit about you, your company, what you're doing, fun facts, etc.
Yeah, so my background is actually it started very early in my process times. It started at McDonald's in the early days when I was a teenager. I fell in love with processes, and that has carried me to where I am today with Mærsk, the world's largest shipping company. Before reaching Mærsk Growth, I was part of Hardcore Capital, so I've been a VC from 2007 and until today. I was also part of raising a smaller Danish fund in between, but now working for Mærsk as a CVC. Also me, and the primary reason for going into the CVC world was that I've heard so many things being on the VC side that the corporates didn't know how to invest. So right now, Mærsk Growth is working on the backbone of a VC with all the structures. We only use external advisors for deal sourcing and also for the structure of the legal part of it. And we really have a solid team that helps the startups both before we invest and after we invest.
Thanks a lot. So Enrico, your company is a little bit different than Mærsk Growth. So can you tell us a little bit about what you're about?
Yeah, sure. Project A, we are a seed and Series A fund. We're based in Berlin. We are currently doing tickets between 1 million to 7 million euros. That's our ticket, not the total round size. So we go in rounds of up to 50 million euros. We usually lead and co-lead. And we do that currently from our third fund. We've just announced it. It's roughly 200 million in volume from various investors. So we have corporates there. We have family offices in there. We have some just individuals there. So a widely varied background of backers, and we put that into tech companies across Europe. So from the Nordics to the UK to Central and Southern Europe, we invest anywhere in the European Union and England. We're never sure how that's going to end up, but we're still very bullish on the UK, of course. We are a generalist fund, so we do everything from the lower hanging fruits of the early days, like e-commerce and the simpler marketplaces, to the more complex stuff. Like deep tech, and in between we kind of moved over to build what we said was domain expertise in areas which we think are highly interesting. So basically I joined 2.5 years ago and took over 3 topics basically. One is logistics, that's the reason I'm sitting here, but also real estate and gaming, and in these areas we go very deep, and we try to speak to a lot of industry experts, and we connect to guys like these who know much more about the market than we do, because we felt that over time it changed. The ecosystem in Europe changed a bit from the time where you could throw some McKinsey guys onto a problem and just say, okay, let's please build the Uber for diapers. That time is over. You have to find founders now who are super interested in the market that they're in, and also have domain expertise to go deep and really understand the customer, because the customer isn't as easy as earlier in the days. One more thing about Project A, we support our ventures with 100 people. Operationally, they work for us full-time. Product dev, software engineering, performance marketing, data intelligence. And we offer these people to our portfolio companies as on-demand support, so there's no obligation to work with us operationally, but if needs be, if there's any area where a founder says, okay, look, this is something we're not comfortable with, can you help us here, we're there to help.
Okay, thanks. So, Jeppe, what is your preferred scope and stage of investment? I mean, what do you see your startups coming in?
So we like to see them early. We are a seed Series A investor. Primarily, we like ticket sizes from our side of $1 to $1.5 million. We are kind of stage agnostic. The good part, which I also mentioned before, is that we're running on a VC backbone. So we have our own investment committee. So actually, if some of you are really interested, I would be able to write a check out tonight and invest on the back of that. And that is super sweet. We're kind of stage agnostic. So I would say when startups comes close to our core business, we can do tickets up to $50 million. But that will mean that I will have to do a full investment proposal and put it in front of the Mærsk investment committee and our CEO. So, and that we do all over the world, but primarily in Europe and North America.
Okay, so let's say one of these guys here are really interested in talking to you. Obviously, that's an invitation you got there. So what are the metrics for them to kind of approach you, and what should they do, like a 60-second pitch, and what do you want to hear? I mean, what's...
So one of the things that I've learned is that I invest in people. Businesses can be really good ideas. One thing that startups, they get to know when they get in dialogue with us is that we try to understand where they come from. Why are they trying to build this company? Are they there for the financial gain because it's sexy to become the next billionaire? Or are they there to really build a business? So we only invest in B2B companies, and that also means that whenever I look at a founder, I want them to be the next industry leader. You know, they should be there to change logistics. So going for that is very important. I will follow that up during due diligence with a deep dive from a consultant. 60% of what I do is to invest in people, and this consultant is going all the way.
So are you on the same page with that, Enrico?
I think we're on the same page there. I think we all invest or try to invest in absolutely stellar teams. I think to maybe qualify what I said earlier, when I say domain expertise, it doesn't need to be domain experience. So we founded a great team that has built Sender, the trucking company. These guys didn't spend 15 years in logistics before. They were just really eager to dig deep and build a great company, and they did quickly. And I think the core characteristic of a founder that we look for, and I mean, it sounds like an obvious one, but we try to stress it as much as possible, is what we call intellectual humility. So basically the humbleness to always learn from whoever's in the room, which some founders really don't do, which is interesting, but the best of founders who I've met in those 2.5 years at Project A were always the ones who were asking more questions than me. They're super interested to learn and understand, and I think that's the main characteristic that drives the founder forward.
So in terms of them being at your offices, presenting one meeting, second meeting, third meeting, at the end before you invest, what is the final question you ask yourselves like? I mean, I wish there was a final question like that. I think the ultimate question is obviously, since I'm the provider of financial services, right? So to my investors, I present a financial service, and I provide that hopefully to the best of my knowledge. And I always have to ask myself: so is this guy able, or this girl, sorry? So is this founder able to to create a meaningful return with the investment that I give them for the fund? That obviously it informs a lot of sub-questions that there are, like is the market obviously ripe for that? Is the business model even capable of that? Is the technology scalable? All these things, but in the end, a lot of founders are always frustrated, for example, when we turn them down. But a lot of the times it doesn't mean they're building a bad business. Oftentimes it just means, well, with that valuation that you're looking for, with that ticket, we don't know if the likelihood of that business becoming $1 billion business is maybe just not high enough for us to invest. So we always think ultimately it has to be the meaningful return on the fund. Okay, sure, thanks. So going to you, Jeppe, in terms of your profile, being a corporate venture capitalist, and your mission about bringing infrastructure and a lot of knowledge and expertise. So people meeting you, startups, what should they have in mind when they meet you in terms of what you can deliver on that part?
So I think when startups comes to us, it should be to leverage our knowledge. So we call that our ABCDE. So our assets, our brand, our customers, our data, and our expertise. I think we are a lot different than VCs because we have the industry knowledge. We have access. If you go to Mærsk, there's 80,000 employees. We have offices all over the world. We can take the startups anywhere. And the long-term goal for us is to do financial returns, but also do something that is of strategic match to what we do. So right now, our core strategy at Mærsk is to become the integrator of container logistics. But that means that we will go all the way out to the consumer. So when we look at this, it's super important that we can deliver this. We are a 20-person team sitting in Copenhagen, investing in Europe and North America. But of the total 20, 10 are investing, and then we have 7 people doing venture development. And I think that is the access you get. There's so much money out in the industry nowadays. So I think it's time for startups to look at CVCs and see what they can do for you. And I think whatever a startup does in relationship to getting funding, look at the people. It's like a marriage. I don't know how many is married. I've done the failure once, so I'm on my second. But please, it's like a marriage. You need to sit in the room with these people for at least, I think, right now it's 7.3 years to exit. So have that in mind when you do your investment. It's a people game.
So talking to you a bit before this session, we talked a little bit about startups and things in general, and Mærsk Growth seems to be really interested across all logistics startups. So why that?
So we look at a lot. We have 2 areas of primary interest at the moment. We do smart logistics. It will be the center, like companies. I've invested into Freight Hub. I've also invested into Fleet, that is end-to-end food logistics here in Berlin. So the reason for doing that is getting this digitization into big corporates. It's also to serve the consumer in the long run, but it's more when you look at SMEs in general, their biggest need to also trade is access to capital. So I've also invested in Modify here in Berlin, that is a trade finance company. We will also be looking at digitization of documentation, KYC, AML companies, because there's so many obstacles to trade, and that is the primary reason of what we're doing.
Thanks. So back to you, Enrico. So at BEUMER we have this notion about the X factor of a startup. So it's about that any startup that we build should be five times better than the status quo of something happening in the market. So it would be really interesting for us here to hear what is your position on the current status in the market for the startups that you meet? I mean, are they 5 times better than status quo with what they bring to you, or on a scale from 1 to 10, what do you think?
Okay, so if you want a 1-number answer to this, it's probably 5, because it's an average from 0 to 10, somewhat in between, I don't know. But I think it really depends on which market you look at. I think it ties into what Jeppe also said. I mean, look at Sander. I think these guys are doing a tremendous job in the industry that they're disrupting, and they're doing it at a tremendous speed. I think the same goes for Freight Hub or for Modify. I've looked at other industries. So, for example, since I do logistics and real estate, I'm looking at the overlap of the two, which is warehousing of some sort, and also how to utilize these assets. There is a lot of things happening in that industry, and I see that at least we get the sense of they've reached that point where the puzzle pieces fall into place and timing is right in order to be able to achieve those 10x. In other industries, a lot of the last mile stuff we see over the past years, I think, was troubled because, I mean, before I joined Project A, I was at Foodora, and that's technically a last mile delivery company. And the unit economics are just all over the place because it's very hard to utilize those assets. It's a matter of density of demand. It's very hard to nail these things. So we've seen a lot of companies that basically just went and did what DHL and Hermes are doing on the last mile, and they just do it with less capital, and that obviously is never a really smart idea. So there is obviously areas in logistics where I think it's still before the curve, but there is definitely some where we think it's hitting the right timing.
So yeah, but do you think you need to be a logistics specialist, a logistics ninja, to go in with a startup and change the world? I mean, do you need the knowledge?
No, I don't believe so. I actually think it's kind of the wrong approach to come from the industry that you're trying to disrupt. So if we take Mr. David Nordhager from Sender or Ferry Heilemann from Freight Hub, you know, they are the consultant-like people that are attacking a huge market. And I think also, as Enrico said, you know, it's something about the people. Look at the people and you know, do they learn as they go? Are they capable of digesting what they hear other people say and then come up with their own opinion and solution to the problem? And I think that is the key element. You have to find these people, and then you have to give them access to the experts, and then they'll develop the disruption.
Thanks. So following up on that, also, you know, we see a lot of logistics startups in space, and there tend to be some kind of misunderstanding between those small, new, humble tech startups and the big players, you know, the big logistics player. What is your opinion about that?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one. So again, across the board, different story from company to company. So the other day we organized as Project A an event with Frank Appel, the CEO of Deutsche Post, and a few selected entrepreneurs that we knew from the mobility and the logistics space. So we differentiate between the two. Mobility is basically bringing people from A to B, and logistics is bringing things from A to B, if you put it as simple as possible. But we put them all in a room, and Frank Appel was speaking to them, and you could quickly realize he's not underestimating anything. He really knows what's going on. It's just that he's steering a very, very large ship that is turning very, very slowly, but it's turning. On the other hand, you see logistics players in a market like trucking, and when we did the due diligence on Sender, we were interviewing freight forwarders and trucking companies, and we told them what they're basically planning, and they said like, no, this is bullshit. You know, I've been in the industry for 20 years. This will never work. You know, I've been doing business that way for all that time, and it's been going well. And that's exactly when what Jeppe just said comes in. You need to be completely free of those, you know, that prior bias, and oftentimes that's young people, and oftentimes there's people not from the industry, and it's also obviously also those people hungry to change things.
So again, one of the last questions here until we go to you guys. Probably have some good questions after this session, but Robert's mentioned the 5-year scale, and a lot of people talk about what will change in 5 years. So yeah, but what will not change in 5 years in your industry?
So what will not change is that we are going to have these huge ocean vessels. We own 760 of those. There will be containers moving from Asia to Europe. So I don't believe in Amazon disrupting that part of our business, also knowing that it's a low one-digit margin business. I don't think they will invest their money into that.
What about you, Enrico? What do you say?
So what is not changing, or what is changing?
What is not changing over the next 5 years?
Tough one to say, because whatever I say is probably going to end up being wrong. But still, to answer this, I think the waves, we see disruption coming in 3 waves, and it's what we see is the first thing happening is being something like we call it a basis of data. So in order to digitize stuff, you need the data to actually do so and change processes. So I think depending on the vertical within logistics you're looking at, I think within the next 5 years, in a lot of them, we're going to reach that first wave, so that at least you have some understanding of data and a clear database, and for hopefully some companies, at least a single point of truth of what's going on. The next step would then be to draw conclusions from that data and to start optimizing, and then comes the automation and robots take over and we're all doomed. But I think we're going to see a lot of things happening on the first step. I doubt that we're going to see in many industries meaningful stuff happening on the third definitely, and on the second, except for warehousing obviously, because obviously that's one of the verticals that is very far ahead. But I think that's depending on the vertical, I think at least all of them are going to reach the one step.
So Jeppe?
No, just adding, so what will change if we take that perspective? I think, in 10 years we're going to be 8.5 billion people on the planet. In 2050 we're going to be 10 billion people on the planet. The growth is coming in Africa and in Asia. China will be flatlining after 2027. I think what is happening in the Western world is that we will need this very, very big consumer-centric focus, because all startups in the end are serving the consumer. You can do a B2B startup, but everything ends up with the consumer. So it's a consumer thing, and that will be going on in the Western world. But what we will see in Africa and in Asia, we will be seeing the leapfrogging. They didn't have the stationary telephone as I had when I was a child. They got the mobile phone to start with. And we will see that change. And it will be the Western world chasing Asia and Africa for development. So beware of that when you're out there. Do disrupt.
So I think this was a nice closing remarks for all of us. So it is now the time to invest in logistics, right?
Sure thing.
Sure thing. Okay. Let's give these two guys a big applause. Please be seated, and I hope that I can motivate some of you to ask some questions. So here we go.
Thank you. So there's a question for both of you, I guess. You mentioned that you see the US market and you see Europe as two investment potential markets, but when you see Europe, it's actually even harder to try to grow a company and really work and operate in the European markets, because logistics, of course, is not like other industries where you can just grow and expand. So how do you see this growth of companies in Europe as in the logistics industry?
So answering that, so it's part of our strategy and what we do when we invest. I only invest in technologies that I can see scale globally. That also means when Sender, which is actually one of my favorite companies, will stop saying that. But there is similar companies, so the world grows immensely. In Nigeria, there's a company called Kobo 360. And that is more, getting, how do you help the truck driver to have a good job? And I think, the technology of Sender is being copied all over the world. So I think, as long as you look at what you can do here, it will be something that you can replicate all over the world.
Maybe to chime in on that, I think with a lot of business models in logistics, you're instantly cross-border, you're instantly global, or at least continental. So I think logistics might be one of those spaces where actually Europe has a better chance of catching up with the big guys. So that's at least the hope we have, and that's a large part of the investment thesis we follow.
All right. Any more questions? Yes. Jonas?
So we are right now trying to sell to this industry, in particular to the fulfillment company scene, and we're seeing a lot of conservatism, where people go, oh, yeah, that sounds really great, it's an amazing idea. I can really see how that makes sense, but I don't know, I'm going to wait 3 years or something like that. Have you met somebody or seen something that helped people really crack this nut? Like how to get this, initial traction?
I think the analogy that we see often with disruptors that really work well is the analogy of the frog in the pot of water. So if you're a business and you're trying to take away business from somebody else, and you're looking at maybe look at edge cases, for example. Yeah, it's a small part of their business. Let's say 5% of transactions of whatever sort. So this is an analogy that works for not only logistics but pretty much every B2B context. 5 part of their transactions falls into a category where the current provider they use, the incumbent, the old guy, maybe doesn't provide as good a service. And they start there to take away that business. And whilst they do that, the customer actually starts realizing that it's so much easier to do business with that new provider of services, maybe you. And over time, that becomes more and more. And that's the analogy of the frog in the pot, right? If you throw a frog into boiling water, he jumps out straight away. If you have a frog in a pot of boiling water and you just start boiling it, he won't realize until it's too late. So I think that's the analogy that can be followed in those situations.
I think that's a very, very clever answer. I would say what you could also do is that you could hook up with a corporate VC and you could leverage all the knowledge they have and all the customers they have.
Any more questions? Yes.
Hey, thanks so far. What are your thoughts of hardware IoT startups versus software startups? What is your favorite and why?
So I can start on that one. We are asset light. I think there are cases where you will have to invest in hardware. So I'm not really fond of them because they often need a lot of money. And you will also need to invest a lot before you see the proof point. And just to be open, the first fund I was part of lost 70% of its investment in hardware.
Last question.
Maybe just to add on that, I mean, I can basically assign everything that you just said. I think hardware is just an intrinsically harder game. Obviously, also intrinsically deeper moats, right? Once you're there, once you've made it, it's very good to defend. I think there is always a way in the business model or some other form or some other part of your business to make up for the complexity of hardware of some sort. It's a very hard thing to do and very few pull it off. But I think there is companies who nail scalability of hardware, for example, over building a hardware as a service business rather than just selling fixed packages. I couldn't name one example from logistics where I've seen that working really, really well, except like the robotics guys that we just had here on stage maybe, but yeah, I think that there is a way to do it.
So, bad news, good news. Bad news is last question coming up now. Good news, food and drinks ready in a minute. So let's have the last question and then we can enjoy some food.
Yeah, thanks guys. I remember that I believe Mærsk participated in this project which was called InsureWave with UI some time ago. It was one of the ideas to utilize blockchain and logistics. I know this is not the most sexy topic these days, blockchain in general, but do you think there is some potential to involve blockchain, use some blockchain ideas and logistics in general? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
So we developed back in 2017 a blockchain together with IBM that is called TradeLens, and that is meant to take over on the logistics industry. I think it partly works, but it needs everybody to sign up. The way that I look at the blockchain is that I hope that the blockchain will disrupt the internet. I think that is the future and is the threat against the internet. But it needs for everybody to pick up on that. But yes, I believe that in 2030, the blockchain will have taken over the internet.
And that may be the last word now, because we are a little bit on the time constraint. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you, Jeppe and Enrico. Please give these guys